outcomes, trade-offs, and recommendations. So as you read in the Bardock text, and you will see some of this mentioned as well in the Welsh and Harris text, you need to state the anticipated outcomes for each of the policy options. Remember, for this report, you need three policy options that you're entertaining. You then state the possible moral hazard or the unintended consequences. I'll give you one example. So let's say we adopt legislation to prevent domestic abuse or violence. Someone may use that protection to file a false claim. And so moral hazard in this scenario is that someone could be, accused of being an abuser and spend time in prison, but actually not be, right? So that's moral hazard. So if we adopt a piece of legislation or a change strategy, what are those unintended consequences? Be sure to summarize and construct these particular elements into some type of visual presentation. You'll summarize the anticipated outcomes in the body of the report, but the visualization, and you'll see on the Bardock text that they're giving you one example of what an outcomes matrix might look like. You don't have to adopt that matrix. You can come up with your own format, but whatever visual that you create, make sure you put that piece in the appendix. So the summary will go in the body, and the appendix of the matrix will go into, the matrix itself will go into the appendix. Let's talk a little bit about trade-offs. And now, again, I want you to review both textbooks. So Welsh and Harris talks about trade-offs. That they don't necessarily use that language, but they cover the same topic. So once you have expressed the anticipated outcomes, you finish your outcomes matrix, you want to state the trade-offs for each of the policy options. Now, for example, if policy option A is adopted, we may see significant decrease in violent crimes. However, this option may require that funds that were set aside for homeless services be reallocated to cover the cost of heightened police presence. So notice the similarity between trade-offs and moral hazard. If you can identify moral hazard and really, work that through in a thorough way, then your trade-offs start to show up in that discussion, right? So if you chart your outcomes matrix properly and you thoroughly think about moral hazard, then the trade-offs will become very clear to you as you write this report. To properly consider the trade-offs, you need to have a good understanding of costs, benefits, risk, and limitations. That means you need to think about the available budgets around the problem that you're addressing and be able to at least speak knowledgeably about how the changes that you're proposing will impact budget outcomes, what would be the benefit to society, what are the risks involved, and do you really have a realistic resources to actually make this thing happen. So this will require you to be very realistic in how you analyze each of the policy options. It will require you to also to dig around maybe deeper than you have before. And if you don't have access to a budget, you can try to piece those numbers together by pulling several elements or several resources together. Now, the Welsh and Harris text provides pretty decent guidance on how to go about rationalizing costs, more so than the Bardock text. So consider page 208 and onward. I think there's about 3 or 4 pages there that provide you with additional guidance on rationalizing cost. Talk a little bit about recommendations. Now, for this assignment, you will use one of these two approaches. The first is to just adopt one of the options wholesale. That means you don't edit the option at all, and you purchase all of the elements of that option. So in your recommendation, you'll go with A, B, or C. You select C, wholesale. The second option is to adopt and combine individual elements from 2 or more of the policy options. So maybe you see some positive aspects in option A, but you also see some policy options in B that are pretty awesome. But together, they would make for better resolution then you would just borrow those elements, combine them, and state that that's what you're doing in your description of your recommendation. Now, when drafting the recommendations, avoid getting personal using words like we or I. Don't be casual with your language. Just because the recommendation is a reflection of your complete effort for this report doesn't mean that you relax your language. So while this is important, this is the most important part of the report, you still want to maintain a professional tone. If you have any questions about this part of your report, feel free to reach out to me. Good luck.